This story is a work of fiction, inspired by real events. Names, dates, locations, and identifying details have been changed or dramatized to protect privacy and enhance the narrative. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental or used fictitiously. This content is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not aim to glorify crime, promote violence, or pass judgment on real individuals. Viewer discretion is advised. Some scenes may contain mature, disturbing, or triggering content. What you are about to watch could have happened anywhere, to anyone. It's inspired by real events. Whispers of truth, buried beneath layers of fiction. We've changed the names, the dates, the locations, but the emotions, the betrayal, the fear, those are real. This story is not meant to accuse, only to reveal, to make you question, who do you really trust? If stories like this keep you thinking, long after they end, hit subscribe, smash like, and drop your theory in the comments. Now watch closely, before the truth disappears again.
By the standards of anyone looking in from the outside, the Williams family had it all. A husband, Marcus Williams, in his late 30s, worked as a respected real estate developer in downtown Atlanta, confident, charming, and known for turning old buildings into new beginnings. His wife, Ava, was elegance personified, a former model who had transitioned into a lifestyle influencer, posting immaculate photos of family dinners and luxury vacations that always seemed too perfect to question. And then there was Maya, their teenage daughter, the quiet heartbeat of the home. She had her father's calm smile and her mother's flawless poise, though neither would last for long. The Williamses lived in a glass-walled apartment that hovered above the city like a symbol of success. Every room sparkled. Every post online told the world that love, money, and beauty lived there in harmony. But behind every filtered photo was something no lens could polish: exhaustion, silence, and a tension that grew heavier each night. Marcus was working longer hours, trying to meet deadlines that seemed to stretch endlessly. Ava was spending more: clothes, dinners, jewelry, insisting it was for the brand. Their arguments were quiet at first, whispers that slipped under Maya's door at midnight. But whispers have a way of growing teeth. Maya saw it before anyone else. The small changes. The sudden distance. Her father's eyes that no longer stayed on her mother when she entered a room. Her mother's laughter that sounded forced, brittle, too sharp around the edges. Still, on social media, the smiles remained, the captions longer, the love louder. As if Ava was trying to convince not just her followers, but herself. Marcus wanted space. Ava wanted control. And Maya, caught in between, wanted her family back. But in that apartment, appearances mattered more than peace. When friends visited, Marcus played the perfect husband. When the cameras were on, Ava played the perfect wife. They danced through dinners, toasted anniversaries, smiled for photos, all while the floor beneath them began to crack. Because the truth was, the Williams family wasn't built on love anymore. It was built on pressure, the kind that crushes from the inside out. And on the 25th floor, where the city lights glittered like temptation, one woman was about to decide that control mattered more than compassion. It began quietly, the kind of silence that doesn't announce itself, but spreads. Maya noticed it first. Breakfasts once filled with laughter were now quiet performances. Her mother scrolled. Her father stared into coffee, pretending the noise of the city outside was enough to fill the gap between them. Phones began to lock. Conversations shortened. What used to be open affection became polite distance. Neighbors still called them the perfect couple. But inside that glass apartment, perfection had turned into pressure. Ava's world revolved around being seen. Every photo, every smile, every outfit, curated for approval. Her followers adored her, strangers envied her. But Marcus saw through it all. He knew the sparkle was survival, and that Ava feared one thing more than failure: invisibility. He'd once been her world, but lately, he felt like a background prop in her story. And late at night, sitting alone in his office, he'd stare at their wedding photo, that frozen image of hope, and wonder when the woman he married had become a stranger he had to impress. Ava, meanwhile, felt the ground shifting beneath her heels. She had built her identity around luxury, validation, and being desired. The thought of losing that terrified her. She'd rather be hated than forgotten. So, she smiled wider online, even as her marriage unraveled offline. Her captions grew longer. Her followers multiplied. But the love inside her home was dying quietly. Money became the battlefield. Missing funds. Suspicious charges. Marcus confronted her once, calm, almost pleading. And she deflected with tears, turning guilt into sympathy with practiced grace. It worked. For a while. But Maya saw what others didn't. The new perfume. The late-night phone calls. The laughter that returned only when Marcus was away. She couldn't name what was happening, only that it scared her. Because love had left the room, and something else had moved in, something colder, calculating, waiting. And one evening, standing in her doorway, Maya watched her mother's reflection in the mirror, flawless, unreadable, her eyes fixed not on the past, but on her next move. That was the night Maya realized beauty could lie. And in their home, it was lying beautifully. By spring, the smiles were gone for good. Marcus buried himself in work, driving across Atlanta to oversee projects that didn't really need him. He told his team he was expanding his network, but in truth, he was running from silence, from the coldness that had taken root inside his own home. At night, he'd sit in his car outside their building, staring up at the balcony lights, wondering when comfort had become distance. Ava, meanwhile, was busy creating a different kind of life. It began with a brand partnership, then dinners that stretched past midnight. That's how she met Darren Cole, a photographer with ambition sharper than charm, who knew exactly what kind of woman he was dealing with. He saw the cracks beneath her glamour, and where others would step back, he stepped closer. Darren wasn't in love. He was strategic. Every compliment was bait, every conversation an investment. And Ava, hungry for attention, took the hook willingly. He told her she was rare. Irreplaceable. Wasted in a marriage to a man who didn't see her anymore. It was everything she wanted to hear, and exactly what he needed her to believe. She told herself it was harmless, a friendship, a collaboration, a secret no one would understand. But soon, his messages became her oxygen. She began dressing for him, posting for him, breathing for him. And with every post tagged #reborn, her followers cheered her confidence, never realizing what she was really losing. Marcus noticed. He noticed the new perfume, the manicured perfection that appeared when he wasn't home. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He just watched. Quietly. Painfully. And one evening, when a friend showed him a photo, Ava at dinner, her hand resting on Darren's wrist, he didn't say a word. He only looked at her that night with eyes that asked everything and received nothing. Ava didn't flinch. She smiled instead, that calm, practiced influencer smile, because in her mind, she wasn't breaking vows. She was taking back control. To her, this wasn't betrayal. It was balance. But Darren Cole, the man who told her she deserved better, had no idea he'd just become part of a murder story, one that would soon be written in blood, money, and the silence of a daughter who saw too much. The Williams penthouse didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a set, everything still beautiful, everything still cold. The marble floors gleamed, but laughter no longer echoed. Even the air felt rehearsed. Marcus moved through rooms that smelled like her perfume, but it no longer comforted him. Once, it had meant warmth. Now it smelled like betrayal. Every breath reminded him of a woman he no longer recognized. He had found the messages, hidden behind fake folders, buried beneath her influencer apps. The words hit harder than any slap. You make me feel alive again. One day, it'll just be us. He read them twice, not to confirm, but to feel the pain fully, as if understanding it could make it less real. That night, he came home early. The city outside pulsed with lights, traffic, and sirens, but inside, the world was still. Ava stood by the window, her silhouette sharp against Atlanta's skyline. She turned as he entered, her face unreadable, too calm for what was coming. Marcus placed her phone on the counter, screen glowing like a confession. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, quietly, "You went through my things." There it was, defense disguised as offense. But for the first time, Marcus didn't respond with anger. His voice was low, even, almost tired. "I didn't have to look far." The fight that followed wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was two people finally saying what they'd been avoiding for months, that the love had rotted away, and the truth was too heavy to carry any longer. Maya heard it from behind her door, her mother's voice sharp and cracking, her father's measured, breaking in places he wouldn't let her see. A vase shattered. Something fell. Then silence. When the voices stopped, the house held its breath. Marcus moved to the couch. Ava stood by the window again, eyes fixed on the skyline, motionless, expressionless. For a split second, fear flickered across her face before control returned. From her room, Maya pressed record, maybe to calm herself, maybe to feel less helpless. The lens caught her mother framed against the glass, the city lights flickering behind her like judgment. She didn't know it yet, but she had just filmed the first frame of a crime. The city was quiet that night, unnervingly quiet. Rain slid down the glass walls of the penthouse like tears that didn't belong to anyone. Thunder rolled in the distance but never came closer, hovering like a warning. Inside, silence sat heavy between Marcus and Ava, thicker than the air itself. Marcus sat on the couch, his eyes fixed on nothing. The same messages replayed in his mind, word for word, "You make me feel alive again, one day it'll just be us." He wanted to hate her. But what he felt instead was something worse, love mixed with disbelief. Even now, with every truth exposed, part of him wished they could go back to before. Across the room, Ava stood near the balcony, her red silk robe catching faint light from the city. Her drink trembled in her hand. She looked beautiful, and dangerous, like a memory that refuses to die. Maya lay awake in her room. The sound of rain tapping on her window became her heartbeat. Through the small crack in her door, she could see her mother's reflection, blurred by glass and lightning. She wanted to go to her father, to say something, anything, but fear rooted her in place. Marcus rose slowly, each step deliberate. His shoes echoed against the marble floor, calm and steady, like a man walking toward a truth he no longer wanted to face. He stopped a few feet from her. Neither spoke. The city lights flickered outside, the only witnesses. Ava's voice broke the silence. "You ruined everything," she whispered, trembling, not with guilt, but with the terror of losing control. Marcus's expression softened. For all the anger, he still loved her. That was his final mistake. He took one slow step closer, the kind that says, "Please, let's stop this." But she didn't stop. She moved first, sudden, sharp, a blur of red and lightning. The railing was slick from rain. A hand slipped. Gravity decided. For a second, even the storm went silent. Then came the scream, piercing, echoing through the glass and the rain, splitting the night in two. Maya's fingers shook as she hit record, instinct, not thought. Her breath caught. The camera trembled. By the time she reached the balcony, her father was gone. The rain was louder now. And her mother stood frozen, staring into the darkness, the reflection of what she'd done staring right back at her. The world didn't end with the scream. It ended with the silence that followed. For a few moments, even the storm seemed to hold its breath. The rain softened, the city dimmed, and the Williams penthouse became a monument of stillness, beautiful, broken, and unalive. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Maya couldn't tell. When she finally moved, her body felt foreign, her lungs heavy. The red light on her phone still blinked softly, recording what words could never capture, the end of everything she knew. Outside, the street was chaos and color. Blue and red lights flickered against wet glass, casting moving reflections through the apartment. Paramedics worked quickly, but nothing about this scene could be saved. Marcus Williams, husband, father, provider, was gone before anyone asked how. Ava stood on the balcony, drenched, robe clinging to her skin. Her eyes looked distant, fixed on something only she could see. The city's lights glimmered below, and for a fleeting moment, a tremor passed through her, not grief, not guilt, but fear. It was gone just as quickly, replaced by composure. When the police arrived, she already had her story. He slipped. The balcony was wet. I tried to help him. Her voice wavered on cue, her hands trembled at the right moments. To anyone watching, she was the portrait of shock. But when she adjusted her robe before the cameras flashed, Maya saw it, the control returning. Detectives moved through the scene with quiet precision. One crouched by the railing, noticing a fresh smudge too low to belong to Marcus. Another found a faint scratch along the steel where something, or someone, had slipped. They marked it, bagged it, and moved on. Maya stood near the doorway, silent, clutching her cracked phone. She wanted to speak, but her voice refused to come. Her throat burned, the scream was still trapped inside her. A young officer tried to guide her away, but she shook her head. Then, with trembling hands, she stepped forward and held out her phone. The screen flickered, video still recording, proof born from instinct. That small act, fragile, terrified, but brave, became the first light in the dark. Because in the end, truth doesn't scream. It whispers through the evidence left behind. For 2 days, Ava's story held. A slip. A fall. A tragedy no one could question. The report called it accidental pending review, and sympathy poured in from neighbors, followers, even local news. But Detective Raymond Brooks had seen too many tragedies dressed as accidents to believe a word of it. Brooks was calm by nature, a man who spoke softly and noticed everything. When he first met Ava, she was poised, polished, and perfectly timed. Her grief came in measured intervals, her voice cracking exactly when eyes were on her. He wrote that down. 3 days later, he returned to the penthouse. Atlanta shimmered outside the glass, humid, restless, alive, but inside, everything felt rehearsed. Brooks moved slow, his pen still over his notepad, studying the scene the way a pianist studies silence. Then he saw it, a handprint, smudged low on the balcony rail, dusted with red lacquer. And beside it, a faint snag in the silk of Ava's robe caught against the steel. He didn't say a word. He just wrote, too low to belong to him. Across town, Maya sat in a quiet interview room under flickering fluorescent lights. The walls hummed with the low sound of the air conditioner, but inside her head, everything was loud, the rain, the scream, the silence. She gripped her phone like a lifeline. When the video finally played, the room changed. Muffled voices. A blur of movement. Her father's calm tone colliding with her mother's tremor. Then the scrape of metal, and the sound that ended it all. The footage cut to black, but the silence that followed was unbearable. Maya's voice came out small, fragile. It wasn't an accident. Detective Brooks looked at her for a long moment. He didn't nod. He didn't speak. He just closed his notebook. That was enough. That evening, Ava was brought in. Black dress. Sunglasses. The performance continued. She repeated her story, calm, elegant, perfectly tragic. But when Brooks mentioned the video, her pulse betrayed her. He leaned forward slowly, pen motionless above the page. "You said he slipped," he murmured. Would you like to hear what your daughter saw? For the first time since that night, Ava's hands began to shake. Not rehearsed. Not controlled. Real. The interview room was small, too small for lies. Ava sat beneath the flicker of a fluorescent light, hands folded, eyes red from what could have been grief or calculation. The mirror across from her didn't blink, it simply reflected what she'd become. Detective Brooks said little. He'd learned that silence breaks people faster than threats ever could. You said your husband slipped, he began quietly. But you were the only one there. Ava didn't answer. Her nails tapped the table, slow, uneven. Brooks slid a photograph toward her. A still from Maya's video, a silhouette, a blur of motion, a body near the edge. Her breath caught. The walls seemed to close in. For the first time, her mind slipped backward, red silk, rain, his voice, the sound of metal scraping beneath her hands. She saw his eyes one last time, wide not with anger, but disbelief. He wouldn't stop, she whispered. He was leaving. He said he'd take everything, the house, Maya, he wanted to ruin me. Her voice broke, then steadied into defiance. I just wanted him to listen. Brooks didn't speak. He'd seen this before, love turned weapon, grief turned theater. When he finally moved, it was only to push the recorder closer. Say it clearly, Ava. I grabbed his arm, she said. He pulled away. I didn't mean, she stopped, tears rising. It happened so fast. Brooks leaned back, pen still. You didn't mean to push him. But you did. Ava's gaze drifted toward the mirror, searching for sympathy and finding none. Then the faint sound began, Maya's recording, playing from the adjoining room. Her husband's voice. The rain. The scream. The fall. Ava pressed her palms to her ears, shaking her head. Turn it off, she cried. But Brooks didn't move. When the audio ended, her shoulders sagged. The mask was gone. Her voice came out small. Tell Maya. I never wanted her to see that. Brooks closed his notebook. The confession wasn't to him. It was to the silence that finally told the truth. The courtroom felt colder than the night of the fall. Reporters lined the back rows, their cameras whispering clicks into the silence. The woman once called influencer of elegance now sat behind a defense table in plain beige, her hands cuffed beneath it. The trial had drawn crowds. Some came for justice. Others came for spectacle. The media had given her a name, the Gold Digger Widow. Detective Brooks testified first. Calm, measured, factual. He spoke of handprints, lacquer, fibers, and timestamps, tiny fragments that formed a pattern even denial couldn't erase. When he finished, the jury didn't clap, but their eyes told the story, understanding had replaced doubt. Then came Maya. 14 years old, trembling as she took the stand. She looked smaller than her age but stronger than her years. Her voice cracked only once. He loved her, she said. He never raised his voice. He just wanted peace. The jury didn't look at her mother, they looked at her. Some with pity, some with sorrow, all with certainty. Ava's lawyer tried to speak of stress, of fear, of a marriage pushed too far. But no defense could out-talk the silence that followed the video replay, rain, voices, struggle, gravity. When the gavel struck, it echoed like a closing door. Guilty. Second-degree murder. 15 years to life. Ava didn't cry. She just stared ahead, as if waiting for applause that would never come. From the gallery, Detective Brooks rose quietly, nodded once, and left. For him, justice was never victory, only balance restored. Outside, Atlanta hummed with traffic, the skyline indifferent to tragedy. Inside, the cameras flashed like lightning one last time. Ava turned her head, searching for Maya, but her daughter had already gone home, tired, but free. Time moved, but the silence stayed. The Williams penthouse was sold to strangers who never knew what the rain once carried away. The marble gleamed again, the railing polished, yet some echoes cannot be scrubbed clean. Maya lives with her aunt now, far from the city's glass towers. She keeps her father's watch and her old phone locked in a drawer, the one that holds the truth. She's never opened the video again, but every time it rains, she closes the curtains and hums, just loud enough to drown the memory of thunder. The world forgot by winter. But Maya never did. She's 17 now, quiet, thoughtful, carrying her father's eyes and her mother's caution. It wasn't the fall that killed Marcus Williams. It was everything that led to it, the pride, the silence, the need to be seen. Because sometimes, the dead are not the only ones buried. Sometimes, the living carry the grave inside them.